The taste was strange, sweet at first, then bitter, metallic, clinging to the back of my throat. My stepmother's eyes were fixed on me across the table as I lifted the teacup, her smile polite, practiced, too eager. Something in my stomach twisted, and for the first time in my life, I wondered if the woman sitting across from me wanted me dead. Before I tell you how close I came to losing everything, including my life, I want to pause for a quick shout-out. If you love stories of betrayal, shocking family drama, and cold revenge, don't forget to subscribe, hit like, and drop your thoughts in the comments. Trust me, you won't want to miss the ending of this one. Now, let me take you back, because the poison wasn't where the story began. It started years earlier, when I was still grieving the loss of my mother, and my father made a choice that would alter the course of my life forever. My mother passed away when I was 16. Cancer, fast and merciless. One day she was vibrant, brushing my hair, laughing at the dinner table, and the next she was frail, her body giving out faster than we could accept. Her absence left a silence in our house so heavy it felt like the walls themselves were grieving. My father was devastated. He tried to hide it behind long hours at work and forced smiles at family dinners, but I saw the hollowness in his eyes. He couldn't bear the loneliness. So when he introduced me to Caroline, just 6 months after the funeral, I tried to be understanding. She was younger than him by at least 15 years, polished, with a voice like honey and eyes that never quite matched her smile. She moved into our lives quickly, too quickly. One day she was just Dad's friend, and the next she was in our kitchen, rearranging cabinets, telling me to pick my shoes up off the floor. "Your father needs someone to take care of him," she told me once, her tone firm but not unkind. "And I suppose that means taking care of you too." At first, I wanted to believe her. I wanted to believe she cared. But cracks showed early. Caroline wasn't cruel outright, not at first. She was subtle. She'd forget to invite me when she and my father went out to dinner. She'd make little comments about how I looked too much like my mother, how it must be difficult for my father to see her reflection in me every day. She'd insist I was careless with money when I asked Dad for a little cash, or that I was immature whenever I disagreed with her. My father, blinded by his loneliness and her charm, didn't see it. Or maybe he didn't want to. He was just grateful to have someone filling the empty space my mother left behind. And for that reason, I tried to endure. But endurance wears thin. One night, about a year after she moved in, I came home late from a study session. My father was already asleep, but Caroline was waiting in the kitchen, a glass of wine in her hand. "You know," she said, swirling the liquid, her tone casual, but her eyes sharp, "your father worries about you. He wonders if you'll ever grow up enough to take responsibility." I bristled. "I'm 17. I'm already doing more than most people my age." She smiled, a thin, humorless curve of lips. "You're a child. You think the world will hand itself to you because your parents built something. But soon, it won't just be your father and his legacy, it'll be me too. Don't forget that." I didn't answer. But her words stuck, heavy and sour. By the time I turned 18, I had grown accustomed to Caroline's presence. She wasn't a stepmother in the nurturing sense. She was more like a silent competitor in my own home. Every achievement of mine was met with faint praise. Every mistake magnified. And always, that undercurrent of resentment in her tone when she spoke about my closeness with my father. Still, I could never have imagined she'd go as far as she did. The first time I noticed something was wrong, I brushed it off. I'd had a slice of cake she made for family dessert night. Hours later, I was doubled over with stomach cramps so sharp I thought I'd need to go to the ER. She fussed over me, rubbing my back, offering ginger tea. "Poor thing," she murmured. "Maybe you have a weak stomach." It passed by morning and I let it go. But then it happened again. And again. Always after something she prepared. Always with her hovering nearby, too helpful, too watchful. By the time I sat at the table with that strange-tasting tea, part of me already knew. The metallic bitterness wasn't an accident. It was intention. And when I looked up, Meeting her eyes across the rim of the cup, I saw it. A flicker. A glint. Not of care, not of love, but of calculation. She wanted me gone. Of course, at that point, I didn't understand why. Not fully. I thought maybe it was jealousy, maybe hatred. But the real reason was far colder and tied directly to the inheritance my father had secured for me long before she ever came into our lives. But that part of the story? That revelation? It was still waiting for me, just around the corner. All I knew that night, with the bitter taste still coating my tongue, was this: Caroline wasn't just a manipulator. She was a predator. And I was her prey. On the surface, Caroline played the role of perfect wife with effortless grace. She laughed at my father's jokes, smoothed his tie before dinners, and praised him in front of guests. She was always polished, always glowing. People in our community admired her. "Your dad is so lucky," they'd say. "She's such a refined woman." But behind closed doors, the glow dimmed and the mask slipped. Not all at once, just little fractures here and there. The kind you only notice if you're the one standing in the shadows with her. And I was. The first cracks showed in how she handled me and my father's bond. Dad and I had always been close. After losing Mom, he leaned on me more than he realized. We'd go for late-night drives just to clear our heads, or cook breakfast together on Sundays like we had when I was a kid. It wasn't grand gestures, it was familiarity, comfort, the kind of bond grief sharpens instead of breaking. Caroline hated it. "Oh, another father-daughter date," she'd say when we came back from a drive, her smile too tight, her arms folded. "I suppose I'll just eat alone again." At first, I thought she was just adjusting, maybe feeling left out. I even tried including her sometimes. But when she joined us, she didn't blend in. She dominated, steering conversations back to herself, rolling her eyes if Dad and I shared inside jokes. It wasn't about being included. It was about control. Then came the whispers. Caroline was clever with her words, never outright lies, never direct accusations, just little hints designed to wedge doubt between me and my father. "She's a sweet girl, but a little careless, don't you think?" I once overheard her telling him when she thought I was out of earshot. "I worry she'll make reckless decisions with money. Maybe we shouldn't encourage her too much, it might make her spoiled." Spoiled. That word stung. My mother had raised me to be independent, to work hard, to never take advantage of the life my parents provided. But Caroline twisted things, shaping my image in my father's mind with quiet, poisonous comments. And Dad, so desperate to keep the peace in his marriage, often nodded along, not realizing the seeds she was planting. The subtle manipulations soon turned into small acts of exclusion. Family dinners? She'd forget to tell me about them until after the fact. Vacation planning? She'd insist there wasn't enough room for me to join. Important conversations about finances? She'd whisper them with Dad late at night when she thought I was asleep. Whenever I confronted her, she feigned innocence. "Oh, did I not tell you?" she'd gasp, hand to her chest, eyes wide. I must have slipped up. You know how busy I get. But the smirk that followed told the truth. One incident is seared into my memory. Dad had given me a small allowance from the family business to buy books for my college classes. I was careful, keeping receipts, balancing every dollar. But one morning, Caroline confronted me in the kitchen, waving my bank statement like a weapon. $75 at a clothing store, she said, her voice sharp. "Is that what your father's money is for? Frivolous shopping?" My cheeks burned. Those were work clothes. I needed them for my internship interviews. "Work clothes," she sneered. "That sounds like a convenient excuse. You're irresponsible, and your father needs to stop indulging you." I wanted to shout back, to defend myself. But just then, Dad walked in and Caroline switched her tone in an instant. "Oh, sweetheart," she said sweetly, holding out the statement like she was concerned. "I just worry she doesn't know how to budget yet. Don't you think we should guide her more closely?" Dad looked torn. He muttered something about me being responsible enough, but I saw the flicker of doubt in his eyes. And that flicker was all she needed. The more I resisted, the subtler she became. It wasn't just about isolating me from my father. It was about wearing me down slowly, steadily, until I began questioning myself. I'd catch her moving things from my room, then insisting I'd misplaced them. I'd overhear her twisting stories I told Dad, making me sound careless or rude. I'd feel her eyes on me whenever I walked into a room, calculating, cold. And yet, in public, she was perfect. She praised me in front of neighbors. She called me her dear stepdaughter to anyone who'd listen. She even hugged me at family gatherings, her arms stiff around me, her perfume suffocating. It was a performance. And my father was her most loyal audience member. One evening, I tried to talk to him. "Dad, I don't think Caroline likes me very much," I admitted, my voice small. He looked startled. "What?" "Of course she does. She talks about you all the time." I shook my head. "No, I mean, she says things. She makes it seem like I'm irresponsible, like I can't handle myself." He frowned, but nodded at me. "She's just looking out for you. Don't take it so personally. She's trying to help." That was when I realized the danger. It wasn't just Caroline's manipulation. It was my father's blindness. He didn't want to see her flaws, so he excused them, giving her power to twist the truth as she pleased. And with every doubt she planted, my position in my father's eyes weakened. I tried to push through, tried to remind myself that she couldn't erase who I was. But the cracks in our household grew wider. Caroline didn't just want to be my father's wife. She wanted me erased. The more I noticed her schemes, the more I started to wonder, how far would she go to get what she wanted? I didn't know then. But I would learn soon enough, when the poisoning attempts grew too blatant to ignore. Because Caroline's mask wasn't just cracking. It was crumbling. The first time I fell sick, I told myself it was a coincidence. Food poisoning, maybe. Stress. Anything but the gnawing suspicion that had been creeping into my mind. It was after dinner. Caroline had cooked a fancy meal, a roast with potatoes and wine sauce. Halfway through the night, I woke up drenched in sweat, stomach twisting into knots so sharp I thought I'd pass out. I spent hours curled up on the cold bathroom floor, too weak to even cry out. By morning, the worst of it had passed. Caroline played the doting stepmother, standing in the doorway with a tray of tea and toast. "You poor thing," she cooed, setting it on the nightstand. "You must have caught a stomach bug. Drink this, it'll help." The tea smelled sweet, too sweet, and my stomach lurched at the thought of swallowing it. But I forced myself to sip, her eyes watching closely. It burned all the way down. The second time, it was cake. She had baked it herself, beaming as she sliced generous portions for me and my father. "Special recipe," she said with a smile, placing the plate in front of me. Dad had only a small piece before excusing himself to take a work call. I finished mine, didn't want to seem rude, and within an hour, the now familiar cramps hit. Caroline hovered again, concern painted across her face like a mask. "Poor girl," she said softly, stroking my back as I bent over the sink. "You've always had such a weak stomach." I wanted to scream. My stomach hadn't been weak before she entered our lives. But the words stuck in my throat, drowned by pain and fear. By the third time, I couldn't ignore it anymore. It was a glass of orange juice. Simple, ordinary. Except for the strange, metallic tang that lingered after each sip. I put the glass down, forcing a casual smile. "Not really thirsty," I said. Her eyes flicked to the glass, then back to me, her smile tight. "Suit yourself." I excused myself and poured the rest down the sink when she wasn't looking. That night, for the first time in weeks, I didn't get sick. And that's when the truth hit me like ice in my veins. She was poisoning me. The realization terrified me. I couldn't prove it, not yet. My father would never believe me without evidence. Caroline was too clever, too skilled at twisting narratives. But I couldn't just sit there and let her kill me slowly. I began watching her more closely, paying attention to everything she prepared. Meals she insisted I eat, drinks she hovered over, snacks she offered with two wide smiles. I noticed how she always poured mine separately, always handed me my plate personally, always kept her eyes on me when I took the first bite. It wasn't care. It was calculation. I started pretending, taking tiny sips, small bites, then discreetly dumping the rest. My health improved almost immediately, though I still feigned occasional stomach aches so she wouldn't suspect my act. But the pretending took its toll. Every time I sat at the table, every time she slid a plate toward me, I felt my pulse race, my hands tremble. It's one thing to know someone hates you, it's another to sit across from them, smiling, while they try to kill you. The breaking point came one evening when my father had to work late. Caroline insisted we have dinner together, a chance to bond, she called it. She set a steaming bowl of soup in front of me, her eyes glinting in the candlelight. "Go on," she said softly, resting her chin in her hands. "Tell me what you think." My spoon trembled as I lifted it. The broth smelled normal, but the moment it touched my tongue, the bitter taste bloomed. Metallic. Wrong. I forced a smile, setting the spoon down. "It's good. I'm just not that hungry." Her smile faltered, just for a moment. Then she leaned back, sipping her own wine, her eyes never leaving mine. The air between us crackled with unspoken words. We both knew. That night, curled up in bed, I realized something chilling. Caroline wasn't just trying to hurt me. She wanted me out of the way completely. And deep down, I knew why. It wasn't just jealousy. It wasn't just resentment of my bond with my father. It was about money. The estate. The inheritance my mother had left me. The legacy my father promised would one day be mine. Caroline didn't want to share it. She wanted it all. And the only way to get it was to erase me. But if she thought I'd make it that easy, she was wrong. I decided that night I wouldn't just survive her attempts. I'd expose her. And when I did, she'd regret ever thinking she could poison me out of existence. My father had always been careful about his legacy. He built his business from nothing, invested wisely, and made sure our family never wanted for anything. After my mother's death, he became even more protective of what he'd built. So when he called me into his study one evening, his expression serious, I knew it wasn't a casual talk. Caroline hovered in the background, her smile frozen in place, but her eyes sharp and watchful. "Sit down," Dad said, gesturing to the chair across from his desk. I obeyed, my palms damp. "I've been updating the will," he began, his voice steady. "It's important that everything is clear and fair. I want no disputes later." Caroline's hand tightened around the arm of her chair. My father continued. "Your mother's wish was that her estate, her family properties, the savings she left, would go directly to you when you come of age. And I've honored that. The house, the business shares, the land, it will all be yours one day." The words should have brought comfort. Instead, I felt a shiver crawl down my spine. Caroline's face was pale, her lips pressed so tightly together they looked bloodless. I glanced at her, then back at my father. "What about Caroline?" I asked cautiously. "She'll be provided for," he said quickly, almost too quickly. "But the bulk of the inheritance remains yours. That was your mother's wish. And it's mine too." Caroline's eyes flicked to me then, and I'll never forget the look in them. Cold. Calculating. As if she were measuring the space between me and everything she wanted. That night, the house was unbearably tense. My father went to bed early, oblivious to the storm he'd unleashed. I lingered in the kitchen, trying to process the conversation, when Caroline entered. She didn't smile. She didn't play polite. She leaned against the counter, her voice low and venomous. "Do you know how lucky you are?" she hissed. "Do you realize what people would give for what you're being handed on a silver platter?" I stiffened. "It's not about luck. It's about my mother's wishes." Her laugh was bitter, humorless. "Your mother isn't here anymore. I am. And yet he still clings to her ghost, giving everything to you as if I don't exist." I swallowed hard, my throat dry. "That's not my fault." Her eyes narrowed, a glint of fury sparking there. No, but it will be your downfall. She pushed off the counter, brushing past me with a force that made my shoulder sting. For the first time, I realized this wasn't just dislike. It was war. In the weeks that followed, her mask cracked further. She no longer bothered with subtlety around me. "You'll squander it," she sneered one morning as I poured coffee. "You're too young, too naive. You don't deserve what you've been given." When I ignored her, she stepped closer, lowering her voice. "You won't hold on to it. One way or another, it will be mine." Her words sent chills down my spine. She wasn't just angry, she was determined. My father, of course, saw none of this. To him, Caroline remained the dutiful wife. She cooked, she smiled, she hosted dinners where she charmed guests with ease. But when he wasn't looking, her eyes never left me. Watching. Waiting. One evening, I overheard her on the phone. Her voice was sharp, clipped. "Yes, I know about the will," she said, pacing the living room. "It's all locked to her. Everything. Don't worry, I'll handle it." Handle it. The words sent a cold rush through me. I retreated silently to my room, my heart pounding. There was no denying it anymore. Caroline wasn't just bitter. She was plotting. I tried to warn my father once, desperate to make him see. "She hates me," I said, my voice trembling. "She's trying to get rid of me, Dad. I swear she's been trying to poison me." His face darkened with frustration. "Don't say things like that. Caroline has been nothing but kind to you." "No, she hasn't." I insisted. "Every time I get sick, it's after eating something she gives me." She. "Enough," he snapped, slamming his hand on the desk. "I won't tolerate lies about my wife." The sting of betrayal hit harder than any poison could. My father, the man who had always believed me, trusted her word over mine. And that was when I understood, if I was going to survive this, if I was going to protect what was mine, I couldn't rely on him. I would have to fight Caroline alone. From that night on, I stopped expecting rescue. I became careful, watchful, strategic. I avoided meals she cooked, made excuses to eat outside, even learned how to discreetly test the things she offered. And I began to plan. If she wanted to take everything from me, I would make sure she never got the chance. But first, I had to survive her next move. And it was coming. I could feel it in the way she lingered at the kitchen doorway, watching me with that icy smile. In the way she whispered into the phone late at night. In the way she polished the silver teapot one evening, her fingers brushing the spout like it was a weapon. She wasn't done. Not by a long shot. And neither was I. The next attempt came sooner than I expected. It was a rainy Saturday afternoon, the kind where thunder rolled in the distance and the house felt like it was holding its breath. Caroline appeared in my doorway, her smile faint, carrying a tray with a steaming mug. "Chamomile," she said sweetly, setting it on my desk. "Helps calm the nerves. You've seemed so tense lately." The smell wafted up floral, yes, but with something faintly metallic beneath it. My stomach clenched. "I'm not thirsty," I said flatly, pushing the mug away. Her smile froze, the corners of her mouth twitching. "Don't be silly. It's good for you." "No," I met her gaze, steady for the first time. "I don't want it." For a split second, her mask slipped. Her eyes hardened, her lips tightened. Then she laughed, a brittle, hollow sound. My. So suspicious. What kind of girl doesn't trust her own stepmother? The kind with a survival instinct, I thought. That night, I decided I couldn't stay silent anymore. I had to confront her, to drag the truth into the open. I waited until my father came home, then asked him to sit down with us in the living room. My heart hammered in my chest, but I forced the words out. "Caroline has been poisoning me," I said bluntly. "Every time I've gotten sick, it's been after drinking or eating something she's given me." My father's face darkened, confusion etched across his features. "What are you talking about?" Caroline gasped, pressing a hand to her chest like I'd struck her. "Poisoning? Me?" "Yes," I snapped. "The tea, the food, you know exactly what you've been doing." Her eyes filled with fake tears as she turned to my father. Do you hear her? She's accusing me of trying to kill her. After everything I've done for this family. My father looked between us, his jaw tight. Enough. This is absurd. It's not absurd. I cried. I can taste it, Dad. Every time it's metallic bitter. And every single time I end up sick. Caroline let out a strangled sob, burying her face in her hands. She hates me, she whispered. She's always hated me. Now she's inventing stories to turn you against me. Dad, please, I begged, tears burning my eyes. I wouldn't make this up. But his expression was grim, conflicted, his hand resting on Caroline's shoulder in comfort. I don't know what's gotten into you, he said finally, his voice weary. But I won't stand by while you accuse my wife of something so vile. That was the night I understood just how deeply she had him wrapped around her finger. It wasn't just about poison, it was about manipulation. She had mastered the art of gaslighting, twisting the truth so expertly that even I started questioning my own sanity. Had I imagined it? Was I being paranoid? No. The pain in my stomach had been real. The bitterness in the tea, the metallic tang in the juice, the sudden relief when I stopped drinking her concoctions, all of it had been real. But without proof, I was powerless. Caroline, of course, didn't let the confrontation end there. Over the next few days, she doubled down on her performance. She cooked elaborate meals, making a show of tasting everything herself before serving it to us. She left little notes on the fridge for my lovely stepdaughter. She even tried to hug me in front of my father, her arms stiff around me as her perfume suffocated me. To anyone watching, she was the picture of innocence. To me, she was a predator tightening her grip. And the worst part? My father bought every second of it. She's trying, he told me one night, his voice tired. I don't know why you're resisting her so much. She cares about you. She doesn't, I whispered. She wants me gone. But he just shook his head, unwilling or unable to see. The isolation grew. Caroline began telling relatives I was struggling emotionally, painting me as unstable. I overheard her on the phone with my aunt once, her voice soft and sympathetic. She's been lashing out, she said. I think she's still grieving her mother, poor thing. That's why she says such hurtful things. We just have to be patient with her. Patient. As if I were a child throwing tantrums. It was brilliant, in a twisted way. She wasn't just poisoning my body, she was poisoning my reputation, my relationships, my very sense of reality. And it was working. But if Caroline thought she had broken me, she was wrong. Her arrogance blinded her to the fact that every performance, every fake tear, every denial only fueled my determination. I stopped trying to convince my father. I stopped confronting her directly. Instead, I began to watch, to listen, to plan. I started keeping notes, times I got sick, what I'd eaten, how she'd reacted. I saved scraps of food and drink she gave me, storing them in sealed containers hidden in my room. I didn't know yet how I'd use the evidence. But I knew I'd need it. Because Caroline wasn't going to stop until I was gone. And if I wanted to survive, I'd have to be smarter. Smarter than her lies, smarter than her gaslighting, smarter than her poison. One night, as I lay awake listening to the faint clink of dishes in the kitchen, I made myself a promise. I wouldn't just survive her. I'd expose her. And when I did, she'd regret underestimating me. By the time Caroline tried again, I was ready. I'd grown cautious, suspicious of everything she set in front of me. I pretended to sip, pretended to eat, played the obedient stepdaughter she wanted me to be. But behind the act, I was documenting, saving, planning. And she had no idea. It was a Sunday evening when she made her boldest move. My father was away on a business trip, leaving just the two of us in the house. Normally, that would have filled me with dread. But now, it gave me opportunity. She cooked dinner, roast chicken, steamed vegetables, wine. She placed my plate in front of me with exaggerated sweetness. For you, she said, her eyes gleaming. I made it special. The chicken smelled delicious, but I wasn't fooled. I picked up my fork, speared a piece, and brought it to my lips, careful not to actually swallow. Instead, while she was distracted pouring wine, I let it slip into a napkin I'd hidden in my lap. Her gaze flicked to me, expectant. Well, I forced a smile, dabbing at my mouth. It's good. Her face softened, satisfaction flickering across her features. And in that moment, I knew she had done something to the food. That night, I sealed the napkin in a plastic bag I'd hidden under my bed, adding it to the small collection of suspicious samples I'd gathered over the past month. Bits of cake, a half-empty glass of juice, capsules of powder scraped from the bottom of teacups. Evidence. It wasn't much, but it was something. But Caroline wasn't done. The next morning, she handed me a smoothie as I came downstairs for school. Bright pink, thick, with a straw poking out the top. Breakfast, she chirped. You'll need your strength. My stomach churned. I took the glass anyway, pretending to sip as she watched. The taste hit my tongue, fruity, yes, but with that same bitter edge I'd come to recognize. I coughed, forcing a laugh. Too thick, I said, setting it down. I'll take it with me. Her eyes narrowed slightly, but she said nothing. As soon as I left the house, I dumped the contents into another container I'd brought just in case. This time, I didn't just hide it. I carried it straight to a trusted source. Dr. Patel, our longtime family physician, was kind, discreet, and most importantly, loyal to me. I'd grown up visiting his office with my mother. He knew me, trusted me. I walked into his office shaking, clutching the container like it was dynamite. I need you to test this, I whispered. He frowned. Test it for what? I hesitated, then forced the words out. Poison. His eyes widened. Poison? Who? Please, I cut him off. Just test it. Don't ask questions. Not yet. He studied me for a long moment, then nodded slowly. All right. I'll see what I can do. I left his office trembling, both terrified and relieved. If the test came back positive, I'd finally have proof. Proof my father couldn't ignore. Proof that would tear Caroline's mask off once and for all. Meanwhile, Caroline continued her charade. She hovered, watching me like a hawk, her smiles thinner than ever. You look pale, she said one afternoon, tilting her head. Are you sure you're eating enough? I forced a laugh. I'm fine. But inside, my rage was boiling. She thought she was winning. She thought I was still her pawn. And that arrogance was exactly what I needed. Days later, Dr. Patel called me into his office. He closed the door, his expression grave. You were right, he said quietly. The sample contained traces of digitalis, heart medication in high doses. Dangerous. Potentially lethal. My stomach dropped, even though I already knew. So I wasn't imagining it. He shook his head. Not at all. Whoever gave this to you wanted to harm you. I exhaled shakily, relief and terror tangling inside me. Finally, I had confirmation. Proof. But proof alone wasn't enough. Not yet. I couldn't just hand this to my father. Caroline would twist it, deny it, accuse me of fabricating evidence. No, I had to catch her in the act. I had to expose her so thoroughly that even her tears and lies couldn't save her. That night, I returned home with a calm smile plastered on my face. Caroline greeted me in the kitchen, her eyes flicking to my empty hands. Hungry? She asked. Starving, I lied. She looked pleased, bustling to the stove to prepare something. I sat at the table, watching her stir, her movements graceful and deliberate. She thought she was in control. She thought I was still blind. But what she didn't know was that I already had the evidence. I already had the truth. And soon, I'd have the perfect trap. The morning after Dr. Patel confirmed my suspicions, I sat in my room staring at the evidence folder on my desk. Inside were lab results, test reports, and the sealed samples he'd preserved. It was proof. Proof that Caroline wasn't just manipulative or jealous, she was trying to kill me. But proof is fragile without allies. If I showed my father, Caroline would twist it. She'd say I tampered with the samples, accuse me of lying out of resentment. He might even believe her, blinded as he was. I needed more. So I began to build a network. Quietly. Carefully. My first ally was Dr. Patel himself. When I asked if he'd be willing to testify, his eyes softened. "I knew your mother," he said. "She trusted me. And if she were alive, she'd want me to protect you. If it comes to it, I'll stand by you." The weight of those words brought tears to my eyes. For the first time in months, I didn't feel completely alone. Next, I reached out to Mr. Carter, the family's longtime lawyer. He'd handled my father's business contracts for decades and had been close to my mother as well. I asked to meet him privately at his office downtown. "I'm worried about my stepmother," I told him, sliding the folder across his desk. He scanned the documents, his brow furrowing deeper with each page. When he finished, he leaned back in his chair, steepling his fingers. "This is serious," he said gravely. "If what you say is true, she's not only endangering your life, but also attempting to secure control of your inheritance unlawfully. So what do I do?" I whispered. He considered. "Gather more. Enough that even your father can't deny it. And when you're ready, we'll bring this to court if necessary. But until then," his gaze sharpened. "Play the part. Don't let her know you suspect a thing." That advice became my mantra, play the part. So I did. I smiled when Caroline served dinner. I sipped drinks she handed me, subtly disposing of them when she wasn't looking. I let her believe I was still the naive stepdaughter she could toy with. And the more I pretended, the more careless she became. One evening, she cornered me in the hallway, her smile too wide. "You seem calmer lately," she said, her eyes searching mine. I forced a laugh. "I guess I've realized I was overreacting. You're not the enemy, Caroline. Maybe I just needed time to adjust." Her eyebrows lifted, surprise flickering across her face before she masked it. "That's good to hear," she said smoothly. "It's better when we're on the same side." Her hand brushed my arm as she walked past, and I resisted the urge to shudder. She bought it. She actually believed me. With her guard lowered, I started gathering more than just poisoned food samples. I recorded snippets of conversations on my phone, her muttered comments when she thought no one was listening, her sharp words about, "What's mine will be mine." I photographed receipts for strange purchases she made, bottles of medication, herbs that could easily mask toxins. I even found an unlabeled vial tucked in the back of a kitchen drawer one afternoon while she was out. I snapped a photo and left it where it was, my hands trembling. Every detail went into the folder. Every scrap of evidence added weight to the case I was quietly building. I also found unexpected support in an old family friend, Aunt Linda, my mother's closest confidant. She had always been wary of Caroline, though she never said much. One afternoon, I visited her under the pretense of catching up. When I finally broke down and told her everything, her face hardened. "I knew there was something off about that woman," she muttered. "Your mother would never forgive me if I stood by and did nothing." She agreed to help me keep watch, to spread quiet suspicion among the relatives Caroline was trying to charm. A small ripple, but important, because when the time came, I needed people to believe me. Meanwhile, Caroline grew bolder. She thought she'd won me over. She cooked elaborate meals, encouraged me to eat more, poured me drinks with a knowing smile. Once, when my father was at work, she leaned in close as she set a plate in front of me. "You see," she whispered, her voice like venom. "We don't have to be enemies. If you'd just stop resisting, life would be much easier for both of us." I met her gaze, forcing a smile. "You're right." But inside, my resolve hardened. I wasn't just going to survive her. I was going to end her game once and for all. By the time autumn rolled around, my plan was almost ready. I had samples, lab results, witness allies, recordings, and photographs. All I needed was the perfect opportunity, the moment when Caroline would expose herself so completely that even her lies couldn't save her. That opportunity came sooner than expected. My father's birthday was approaching, and Caroline planned a lavish dinner party. Family, friends, business associates, all under one roof. She wanted it to be a showcase of her status, her power as his wife. But I realized it could be something else. A stage. A stage where she would reveal herself, and I would pull the curtain. I spent the days leading up to the party preparing with Mr. Carter and Dr. Patel. We set up hidden cameras in discreet places, courtesy of a trusted technician Carter recommended. Patel prepared sealed test kits, ready to sample anything served at the table. All I had to do was wait. And smile. And let Caroline believe she'd won. The night before the party, she caught me in the hallway again, her voice low. "Tomorrow's going to be perfect," she murmured, her eyes glinting. "You'll see." "Yes," I whispered back, smiling sweetly. Perfect. What she didn't know was that she was right. Tomorrow would be perfect, just not for her. The night of my father's birthday dinner, the house glowed like a palace. Caroline had spent days preparing, her perfectionist touch in every detail. Crystal glasses polished until they gleamed, silverware arranged like soldiers, candles flickering in gold holders that caught the light. She wanted this night to be flawless, a performance of her power. I wanted it to be her undoing. Hidden in that perfect setting were the pieces of my trap, small cameras tucked into bookshelves, one clipped inside a flower arrangement, another hidden behind the liquor cabinet. Mr. Carter, the lawyer, had arrived early under the guise of helping with arrangements. Dr. Patel, my secret guardian angel, came as a guest, carrying his discreet test kits in his coat pocket. Caroline thought she was hosting a celebration. In reality, she was stepping onto the stage I'd built for her. As the guests arrived, laughter and chatter filled the room. Caroline floated among them, her dress shimmering, her smile radiant. She played the role of gracious hostess flawlessly, accepting compliments like they were owed to her. I stayed quiet, blending into the background. My job wasn't to outshine her tonight. My job was to watch. Dinner began with wine. Caroline poured generously, lingering as she filled my glass. "For you, dear," she said sweetly, her eyes sharp with unspoken meaning. I lifted the glass, let it brush my lips, then set it down. Across the table, Dr. Patel caught my eye and gave the faintest nod. The game had begun. The main course was her masterpiece, roasted duck, rich and aromatic. She personally served my plate, her hands steady, her expression calm. "Eat," she said warmly. I picked up my fork, stabbing a small piece. I brought it to my mouth, but as always, I slipped it discreetly into my napkin, folding it quickly. Hidden beneath the table, I sealed it into a tiny sample bag tucked into my purse. Cameras caught it all, her hovering, her insistence, my careful avoidance. And then came the final act. Dessert. Caroline unveiled a decadent chocolate mousse, her pride obvious. She placed a bowl in front of me, her smile widening. "This one's special," she said softly, leaning close so only I could hear. "Made just for you." Her confidence was staggering. She really believed I was hers to toy with. I scooped a spoonful, lifted it toward my mouth, then accidentally dropped it onto the tablecloth. "Oh no," I murmured, reaching for a napkin. Caroline laughed lightly, brushing it off. "No harm done. Have another bite." So I did. I lifted another spoonful, this time slipping it into the second hidden bag in my purse while pretending to savor it. Her eyes glittered with satisfaction. Perfect. As the meal wound down, my father stood to give a toast. Caroline hovered at his side, radiant with the illusion of victory. And that was when I struck. "Dad," I said, rising from my chair, my voice steady. "Before you make your toast, I think we should show everyone something." The room quieted. All eyes turned to me. Caroline's smile faltered, just slightly. "What is it, dear?" my father asked. I turned toward Dr. Patel, who stepped forward calmly. "I've been conducting some tests at your daughter's request," he said, his voice professional, carrying weight. "On food and drink she has been served in this household." Murmurs rippled through the guests. My father frowned. "Tests? What are you talking about?" I reached into my purse, pulling out the sealed bag from dessert. "This mousse, for example." I set it on the table, the plastic crinkling in the silence. Caroline's face drained of color. Dr. Patel pulled out his kit, expertly drawing a small sample. "I can run the analysis right here," he explained. "It won't take long." The room buzzed with confusion. My father looked from me to Caroline, his brow furrowed. "What is going on?" I met his gaze, my voice calm but firm. "She's been poisoning me, Dad." Slowly. For months. Gasps filled the room. Caroline laughed suddenly, too loudly, too shrill. "Poisoning? This is ridiculous. Can't you see? She's been paranoid for ages, making up lies about me. Now she's dragging everyone into her fantasy." Her words bounced across the table, but no one laughed with her. Dr. Patel's test strip darkened within seconds. He held it up for everyone to see. "Positive," he said grimly. "The presence of digitalis in dangerously high amounts." The room erupted. Guests whispered, some stared at Caroline in shock, others at me with sympathy. My father's face turned ashen. "Caroline." She stumbled, her mask cracking. No, that's impossible. She's framing me. She must have put it in herself, to make me look bad." I lifted my phone, pressing play. Her own voice filled the room, a recording I'd captured weeks earlier, her whisper hissing through the speakers. "One way or another, it will be mine." The silence that followed was deafening. Caroline's eyes darted around the room, wild now. You set me up," she screeched. "No," I said coldly. "You set yourself up. All I did was make sure the world could see it." My father staggered back, disbelief etched on his face. He looked at her like he'd never seen her before. "Caroline, after everything?" She reached for him, but he pulled away. And for the first time, I saw her mask shatter completely. She wasn't the polished hostess anymore. She wasn't the perfect wife. She was exactly what she'd always been, a predator exposed under the light. The guests left soon after, whispering, glancing back at the house like it was cursed. My father sat in silence, his hands trembling, the weight of betrayal sinking in. Caroline, pale and shaking, locked herself in the bedroom. But the evidence was already in motion. Mr. Carter had everything he needed to begin legal proceedings. Dr. Patel's testimony was undeniable. And the cameras? They had caught it all. The perfect trap had been sprung. And Caroline was caught in it, with no way out. The morning after the dinner felt like waking up after a storm. The house was quiet, too quiet. My father hadn't spoken a word since the test, since Dr. Patel's voice cut through the air like a blade. Caroline didn't come down for breakfast. She kept to the bedroom, the door locked, her footsteps pacing in frantic circles above me. Every creak of the floorboards sounded like desperation. For years, she had been untouchable. The charming hostess, the dutiful wife. But now the truth was out, and no amount of smiles or sweet words could stitch the mask back together. By noon, Mr. Carter arrived. He didn't come alone. 2 police officers stood at the door with him, their expressions grim. I watched from the stairs as my father opened the door, his face pale and drawn. "Is this necessary?" he asked hoarsely. "It is," Carter said firmly. "The evidence is overwhelming. If we don't act now, she'll slip away." The officers went upstairs. Caroline's shriek echoed through the house. "You can't do this to me. I've done nothing wrong. This is her fault. She's framing me." Moments later, she was led down the stairs in handcuffs, her once perfect hair disheveled, her eyes wild. She spotted me on the staircase and lunged forward, only to be restrained. "You'll pay for this," she screamed. "You think you've won? You're nothing without me." But her words rang hollow. She wasn't in control anymore. For the first time, I was. The trial that followed was messy, but inevitable. Prosecutors had everything they needed: the recordings, the poison samples, Dr. Patel's expert testimony, the footage from the cameras. Piece by piece, her facade crumbled. Her defense tried everything. They argued I had tampered with the evidence, that I was unstable, that I hated her from the start. But the facts spoke louder than her lies. The lab results were clear. The recordings were undeniable. And the video footage, her hovering, her insistence that I eat, the smug look on her face when she thought I wasn't paying attention, was damning. Even my father couldn't ignore it anymore. He sat in the courtroom every day, shoulders heavy with shame. I saw the torment in his eyes. How could he have been so blind? How could he have let her slither so deeply into our lives? On the third day, during a recess, he turned to me. His voice cracked when he spoke. "I failed you," he whispered. "Your mother would never forgive me." I reached for his hand, squeezing it tightly. "You were deceived. That's what she does. But we're still here. That's what matters." For the first time in months, he met my eyes not with doubt, not with frustration, but with raw, unfiltered remorse. And that, more than any guilty verdict, felt like justice. Caroline's reputation collapsed faster than the trial itself. Neighbors whispered. Former friends avoided her. Her name became a cautionary tale, once admired, now despised. Headlines described her as the stepmother who tried to poison her way into fortune. The same society that once adored her now shunned her. It wasn't just prison bars that caged her. It was disgrace. But for me, the aftermath was complicated. Some nights, I lay awake replaying the moments, the bitterness on my tongue, the sickness that left me curled on the bathroom floor, the cold satisfaction in her eyes. I shivered at how close she had come to succeeding. Other nights, I thought of the little girl I used to be, desperate to bond with her, to make her into a mother figure I could love. That little girl still lived inside me, and she mourned. Not for Caroline, but for the years wasted trying to win the affection of someone who only saw me as an obstacle. It was grief mixed with relief. Pain mixed with power. The sentencing came at the end of winter. Caroline stood in court, her face pale, her voice hollow. Gone was the glamour, the charm. She looked like a shadow of herself. When asked if she had anything to say, she lifted her chin and glared at me. "This isn't over," she hissed. But the judge didn't care. Neither did the jury. She was sentenced to years in prison for attempted murder and fraud. The gavel struck, final and unforgiving. And just like that, Caroline was out of my life. Afterward, my father and I walked out of the courthouse together. The winter air was sharp, but it felt cleaner somehow. "I don't know how to make this right," he said quietly. "You already did," I told him. "You believed me. That's enough." He shook his head. "Not soon enough." I didn't argue. The truth was, the scars would always be there. But survival had given me something stronger than bitterness. It had given me resolve. The weeks after the trial, I moved into my mother's old house, the one she had left for me in her will. It felt like reclaiming a piece of her, a piece of myself. The walls still smelled faintly of her perfume. The garden still bloomed with flowers she had planted. For the first time in years, I felt safe. Caroline was gone. The inheritance was secure. My father was finally seeing me for who I was, not a child, not a paranoid girl, but someone strong enough to fight back against betrayal. And me? I finally had peace. But peace didn't mean forgetting. As I unpacked boxes in my new home, I came across my notebook, the one where I had written every detail, every symptom, every attempt Caroline had made. I flipped through it, page after page of evidence. It didn't make me shiver anymore. It made me stronger. Because this wasn't just a record of her crimes. It was proof that I had survived them. The world had seen Caroline for what she truly was. And me? I was still standing. Not as her victim, but as her downfall. The silence in the house after Caroline was gone was unlike anything I had ever known. Not the heavy, suffocating silence of fear, but something lighter, freer. A silence that felt like healing. For the first time in years, I could walk through the kitchen without my stomach tightening. I could pour myself a glass of juice without wondering if it would leave me on the bathroom floor for hours. I could eat without suspicion, drink without dread. It was ordinary. And yet, after everything, it felt extraordinary. But Caroline didn't fade from memory. She lingered like a shadow in conversations, in the hushed whispers of neighbors who couldn't believe the charming hostess they once adored was now behind bars. Every headline, every courtroom sketch, every whispered question about how she could do such a thing, it all reminded me of the war I had survived. And strangely, I didn't feel hatred anymore. I felt pity. Pity for a woman so consumed by greed, so obsessed with wealth and control, that she poisoned her own stepdaughter in pursuit of an inheritance. She had traded love, respect, and her freedom for a handful of money she never got to touch. Her life, once polished and perfect, had collapsed into nothing. That, I realized, was the revenge. I didn't have to raise my voice. I didn't have to scream. All I had to do was survive long enough for the truth to reveal her for what she truly was. And the world had judged her more harshly than I ever could. My father struggled with guilt in the months after her sentencing. He apologized more than I could count, tried to make up for the blindness that had nearly cost me my life. At first, I was cold. The betrayal of his disbelief still stung. But over time, I softened. Because he hadn't poisoned me. He hadn't plotted against me. He had been fooled, just like everyone else. And in the end, he chose to believe me when it mattered most. We rebuilt slowly. Sunday breakfasts returned, the way they used to be. Not quite the same as when Mom was alive, but close enough to remind me of who we were before Caroline. One afternoon, he sat across from me at the kitchen table, his hands wrapped around a mug of coffee. "You remind me of your mother," he said quietly. I looked up, startled. "How?" She was strong. Stronger than me. She didn't let anyone bend her, not even me. "You have that same fire." His eyes shimmered as he added, "She would be proud of you." Tears blurred my vision, but for the first time, they weren't born of grief. They were born of healing. The inheritance, once a source of conflict, now felt less like money and more like a promise. It wasn't about the house, the business shares, or the land. It was about survival, about carrying forward the legacy my mother left me, not letting it be swallowed by someone else's greed. I invested wisely. I protected what was mine. Not out of fear, but out of respect for my parents, for myself, for the battle I had fought and won. Sometimes, late at night, I wondered if Caroline thought of me in her prison cell. Did she stew in bitterness, plotting revenge even now? Or did she finally see what she had lost, what she had destroyed with her own hands? I would never know. And I realized I didn't care. Because her opinion no longer had power. She couldn't hurt me anymore. The true revenge wasn't her prison sentence. It wasn't the whispers that followed her name, or the shame that clung to her. The true revenge was my life. The fact that I was still here, thriving, smiling, carrying on. That I was building a future she could never touch. That her every attempt to erase me had failed. Survival was the sweetest revenge. And thriving, that was victory. When I stood in the garden of my mother's house, the flowers blooming just as she had planted them, I felt a peace I hadn't known in years. The sunlight warmed my skin, the air smelled of earth and lavender, and for the first time, I felt like myself again. Not the girl who had been poisoned. Not the stepdaughter caught in a predator's trap. But the woman who had outsmarted her, who had turned the trap back on its maker, who had survived and won. And now, when people whisper my story, I don't mind. Because it isn't just a story of betrayal. It's a story of survival, of justice, of revenge delivered not with fury, but with patience and proof. And if anyone listening has ever felt betrayed, ever felt powerless, Ever felt like someone was trying to erase them? Let them hear this. You can survive, you can fight back, you can win. Because sometimes the best revenge isn't loud. It's silent, cold, poetic. And it lasts a lifetime. Thank you for following my story to the very end. If you are hooked by this tale of betrayal and ultimate revenge, don't forget to subscribe, like this video, and share your thoughts in the comments. Because trust me, there are more stories to tell. And some of them are even darker.